something that's arguably more important than getting that internship. I mean, congratulations, but you have to keep it as well. It'll help you if you organize and document your work life a little. I started my internship about 2 weeks ago, I think, and when I started, I built this sort of template from scratch, just to kind of track, what I was doing in my everyday day to day, the code that I wrote, the things that I talked about during stand up. So that's what we're gonna be doing in this video. I'm gonna walk you through creating that same template, and I'm also gonna make it available just for you to download if you don't want to go through this process. So let's get started with that. Yeah. Alright, so let's get started. So here I have just an empty Notion page. This is what you get when you make a new page here right on the side. It's untitled right now, so let's start. We could call it something like internship tracker, which is kind of misleading because it feels like you're tracking internships you applied to, but whatever. I don't care too much about the name. The first thing I usually do is I set it to full width. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna set up a to-do sort of database. A database is a collection of items in Notion and also in programming. But in Notion, a database is just a collection of items, and it's how usually you're gonna organize and move stuff around. Now, in databases, there are these things called views, right? Now, views are how you want that data to be represented. So for the first one, we're gonna be working with a list view. It's a table view. So when I click / and table, that's gonna give me a lot of options. What I want is not just a basic table, but I want a table view, and you can see it's under the database section. So I want a database that is in a table view. And here you can see some of my other databases, and I just created a new database because that's what we want to do. You can title this anything you want. I'm gonna call it to do just because I think that's suitable. You could call this bugs or tickets, but I think to do is fine for now. One of the most important things about a database and the data that it has is what properties are you tracking, what information are you storing about these things, right? So the first thing that we want to do is remove this tags. If you want, we'll add it later. Right now we don't need it, so I'll remove it. That's what I do with every new database. I leave just the name. And for this particular tracker, we're going to add a couple of things. So the first thing is we're going to add the type it is. Now now you have all these options of properties. This is what makes Notion so flexible. You can have equations and checkboxes, and a lot of this stuff links to other stuff, in different ways. But what we want is the type of to-do it is. And I'll explain this in a bit more, but basically we click select because we want the user or you to be able to select one of several options. If you want multi-select, that is also an option, but we don't want that. We'll choose select. I would add it to one second. Let me just delete one. All right. So we were editing this property. So select, let's call this type because this is going to be the classification of our to-do. And just for the sake of example, we're going to add 3 types that you might run into during your internship. One of them, let's say it's a task. It could be something like set up your development environment or respond to this email or stuff like that. Another thing could be research. They could tell you to look into certain technologies, certain ways of implementing stuff. And a third type is a bug. There's an existing code base and you have a bug to squash. Now this next part is not that important, but I like to do it usually. I like to color code my stuff by what feels right. So for example, a bug is danger, so I'll set it to red most of the time. Research is something mild. I don't enjoy it a lot, but it's doable, so I set it to yellow. Task, it feels blue, so let's leave it at that. So that's our first property. So the next property that we're gonna add is the status of stuff, right? Obviously, because it's a to-do, you have to track the state of each to-do. You have to say, okay, is it done? Is it in progress? Is it, in the backlog? We haven't even started on it. So we can use the status property. It's very nice built in. You can edit these, but I think I'll leave them as is, except I'm going to call this backlog, and I'm going to call this completed. no reason. You can totally leave them as is. I just like to do it. Right. So that's quite quick and easy. You don't need to do anything. The next property that we're gonna add is a URL. Now, your company could do tickets in different various ways. Some might not have URLs, but the way my company manages it, and the way I've seen some of my friends, like other people's company managers, they have URLs for tickets. So if the task, corresponds with a ticket, you can put your URL here. It keeps it nice and tidy. If you're just working off of this database, you need to do what you've done. You just click on that link, it takes you to that ticket, and you can see the status of that ticket, work with it, whatever. So that's that. And okay, so the last two fields we're gonna add are, I think, what make this most interesting. And this is the most complex field we're gonna work with. We're not gonna get more complex than this because, again, we don't want to overcomplicate it. All right, the last two fields that we're gonna add are gonna be earnable points and earned points, right? And I'll basically what it is tickets usually have points. Some companies call them like story points or whatever, bug points. Usually there's something like 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, stuff like that. And you get those points when you complete a ticket or complete a task or complete a user story or something like that. And if you're using Jira, it's usually built in. There's a lot of provision for it there. If you're not using Jira, the manager might tell you just like manually, or they might label it somewhere else. So we want to track that, and the end goal basically is to see how many points are earnable so far. Like, what are the total points worth of tasks or to-dos that you have been assigned by your manager or whatever superior. And what you want to do is you want to see how many of those you have completed, how many points have you gotten so far. So to that end, we will add two fields. The first will be earnable points. Oh wait, so we have to choose the type. That's a number, and we call it earnable points. You can see Notion has these nice visual aids as well. We're fine with just keeping it as a number for now though. Alright, so that's earnable points. The second one is going to be an equation or formula, and we're going to call this earned points. And formula, I think, is the most powerful, I guess, field here because it gives you a lot of flexibility with what you can do with the fields that you already have. So the formula that we're going to write is if. So if our prop that is called status, if that is equals to completed, remember how I renamed done to completed? So if you didn't rename it, you should write done here instead of completed. Basically, it gets, for that one item, it gets what the status is. And if it's completed, then you do something. And if it's not, then you do something else. So this is the syntax of this built-in formula. So if status is not completed, you just want to get 0 points. Like, you haven't earned any points if you have not completed it. If it's anything but completed. But if it is completed, then we want how many points it's worth. And the way we get that is earnable points. So that's why we made that first field like this right here. That's why we made it. So we can get prop earnable points. Let's see, and that should work. So basically, if for this item, if status is completed, then you get the points that it was worth. But if not, you get a 0 until you complete it, obviously. So those are the properties. And let's test them. We'll remove these default items and we'll click our, let's say the first task is set up development environment. Now this usually would not have points associated with it, but let's imagine it does. So you can see automatically it sets the status is backlog. So let's say you're doing it right now, you bring it in progress, and this is a task. You don't have a ticket associated, you might, I don't. So I'll just leave this blank. Let's say it has, 5 story points or, points associated with it, sprint points, whatever. And you can see here, earned points is 0. But when we change this status to completed, you have your earned points. Now a useful thing might be, so basically these, when you hover over the bottom of the database in table view, you can see they have this calculate thing for every column. And this is quite useful because here I can do sum, and here I can do sum. And just by comparing these two values, when I have obviously when I have more items, such as make a new app, obviously it's pretty big, you haven't done that, so it's in the backlog or it's in progress, and it's worth 30 points. You're not going to get any of them. So here you can see by comparing these two numbers how many points worth of work you have been assigned so far and how much of it have you done. So it's nice to keep track of, how is your pace fine, do you need to work more, perform better, stuff like that. Alright, let's move on. So that was this to-do tracker complete, and you can move these columns around as you wish and resize them. But that is one out of three main components in our template. So let's move on to the other two. The next one I called milestones. You can call it something else. I don't think milestones is that suitable, but I just stuck with it. So that is gallery, and that's a view. It's a gallery view of a database. Again, we're going to make a new database, and we're going to call it milestones. Right here. I'm going to delete all of this because I'm going to be making more templates and I don't like seeing this stuff. So milestones, let's make, okay, so remember how I said we adjust the properties and that defines basically what that database holds. So one way to do that here was using, these columns. Another way is to make a whole new template and add them here. And just for the sake of your knowledge, I'm going to show you another way, which is you make a new item and you can add or edit these, and it's going to change it for every single item. Change the properties, not the value, the properties that are available. So let's delete that. What we want to do is we want to make a new template. So whenever you click new, this is not what we see. We want to see some stuff that's already pre-filled, and you can just enter and continue with that. So let's delete that. Let's make it already shows. Let's delete that. Delete. Let's make a new template, and let's work off of this. So what I'm going to call it is stand up. Now, the goal of this database is going to be, let's say you have a stand up meeting every day, every working day at 12 p.m. or 10 a.m. What this database intends to do is 30 minutes before your stand up meeting, it's going to auto generate an item with this template that we're going to set up right now, and all you have to do is fill out the information that it asks for, and you should be good to go for that stand-up meeting. You should be ready to talk about what you've done, and you're not stuttering or forgetting what you did. So that's the goal of this template. First things first, let's set up the properties. So not too heavy on the properties here, we're just going to have two, and really we only need one. I add a second one in case it's useful later. But the first one is the importance property. Now it's going to have 3 levels, and the importance property is basically the stuff that you want to talk about in stand-up, how important it is. One is it's urgent. This might be something that's blocking your work or not letting you proceed or something like that, and you need to discuss it with your manager immediately. Second one is, somewhat important. The labels that I share in the template might be somewhat different. I have no idea what they were. But, yeah, somewhat important and mostly irrelevant. Right. I'm going to make that yellow. So these are the 3 categories. I do it just for the, just in case, but you can exclude this property if you want. And the next property is a bit more important, and it's a relation. So how I said formula was a really powerful property? I think relation is a close second. And what relation is basically you link this, it gives you the ability to link certain items in this database to other items in other database. So let's see, I want to link it to show three more. These are my other ones. Yeah, so I want to link my stand-up items to my to-dos. So what this is whatever I talk about in stand-up, I should have items in my to-do that I've doing or done or that are in the backlog, and I can talk about them and I can link them, right? So no limit, this is fine, just click add relation and you should be good to go. Now if you see here, we added certain items and you'll see them here. And yeah, you can link when you make your stand-up, notes and everything. You can link it to that specific to-do item. So yeah, now the setting of the main template is pretty easy. You just do H2 and you write basically accomplished. And remember that we're making a template right now, so you don't have to write actual real stuff. Wait a second. You don't have to write actual real stuff. You can just write headings and give space for what you want to fill in later. Obstacles up. H2 for heading 2. Did I make a heading 3? Obstacles. Anyways, you can figure out later. But yeah, so that's we want to discuss there. Okay. So this is very basic. You could add, if your workflow is different, you could add other categories. But this is, I'll add a third one just for the sake. If you have any questions to ask, feel free, right? So I think this mostly covers all bases. It might not. Feel free to edit it as you wish. And then just click back and you have your stand-up. There you go. See? And it generated this item that we wanted. Now, the trick that we want is we want to set it on a routine timer, right? It should generate one every day at the time specified. And all you have to do is open this and fill it in. So how we do that is, first we'll make this the default. Set as default for all views. Right, that's just for convenience. And the second is this repeat thing. So unfortunately there's no repeat timer for every work day, so you have to set it to every day. And this repeats every 1 day's repeat daily. And what we want is we want Notion to create one item of this template at exactly, let's say, 10 a.m. EDT. Right, so what Notion will do is, as soon as it's 10 a.m. and it's 30 minutes before your meeting, is going to generate a new item like that. It's going to be like that. And all you have to do is you have to go in and fill it in. Right. Just a couple more things we're going to edit before we finish this up is we're going to display some properties. So we want to see, since all of them are, you can rename them, but by default they're going to be called stand-up. So it helps to see the date, and how I made the date visible is I went into the 3 dots, properties, and these are the properties that are visible, and these are hidden. So you could show importance. I feel like we don't really need to show to do, because if you want to access to do, you should ideally be opening it up, right? And here, just for the sake of it, I'll link it. And did a lot of stuff. Nothing. What is your name? Right, and so that's what you want to be doing 30 minutes every day before your stand-up. So the last part of this little template that we're putting together is something called the journal, right? And this is analogous to, if you imagine if you had this internship, if it's on-site, then you might have personal experience, but it's like carrying around a little notebook, and this is your basically a place for everything that's either not a to-do or not a milestone or not a stand-up meeting, whatever it is, right? This is where you put everything else. And I'll give you examples. In my internship, this kind of stuff that I put in here is if I do any research or documentation that it's not immediately required, or if I fix a bug and I want to keep track of how I fixed it because I know it's going to come up later, then this is where I put it. And what it is basically, again, a gallery view of a database, and we're gonna create a new database, delete these. Actually, I'll show you a useful feature. If you click the three dots and you go to, I think it was layout. Yeah, if you go to layout, you can decrease the card size, but I like it medium. But you could also remove the preview so you have just the items like that. And this is what I prefer for this particular database. I should call it journal. And you don't have much to set up here. If you go here, again, remove the tags property. There's no need for it. At least you can add it if you want. I just find that it's not very useful. And we just have to add one property, which is a relation. And we're gonna add it to, you can add it to whatever you want, but I'm gonna add it to my milestones. Is that right? Yeah, so that's my milestone. So you can add a relation, and you can add it to your to-do as well. It's up to you. I find that it's useful usually for me to add it to milestones. And you don't have to add a lot here. This is your creative space. So leave this blank because you want to be able to add just whatever you want, whenever you want. So I'm just going to delete this and create a new page. There we go. It has our properties. We can call it research into AWS S3, for example. Let's say you looked into S3 storage buckets for your internship. Whatever you want H1, a heading, problems or something. So yeah, you can just go crazy here. And that is the purpose of the journal, is to give you space to dump everything else that doesn't fit into your other categories. And I think that kind of simplifies the template a bit, because usually what other templates do is they have a category for each type of thing, and that may work well for some people, but I feel like it's too overwhelming for me. So having this journal to just dump everything else and having these two just right in front of me immediately is helpful. I think it's efficient and effective, allows me to be productive in the way I want. So yeah, that's the template. Again, I will make it available just as like a download link, or you can like duplicate it or something like that if you don't want to go through this entire process. But yeah, there should be another video about like Notion tips and tricks, stuff like that. So stay on tuned for that. Comment, subscribe, whatever. Have fun.